Ladies and gentlemen, as the sun sets in the west, which is over in that direction, it is a late Tuesday evening edition of my weekly CFL football pick show for week 9 of the 2023 CFL football season. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. I am still basking in the afterglow of Touchdown Atlantic, my first CFL game experience, and I can't tell you what an incredible experience it really was, just getting to watch two of these teams that I've talked about for years right in front of me. And again, it's so goofy, right? Like, I mean, it's people are like, I have season tickets, I go to these teams all the time, it's not a big deal. Almost kind of the way I feel about like the Halifax Mooseheads now, because I'm spoiled because I've gotten to watch them so much, but I've never had the proper opportunity to watch a CFL game live in front of me. So this was an incredible experience. I loved every little bit of it. Maybe I'll make its own video. I might make its own sort of separate video talking about my Touchdown Atlantic experience, because again, it was a lot of fun. I think Halifax did an incredible job with this game. I cannot wait for 2024. I think it went off without a hitch, and it was a very fun game featuring, again, the best team in Canadian football. So can't ask for too much more than that. What I could have asked for is a slightly better week 8 in terms of my results. I was even money straight up and even money against the spread. So 2-2 and 2-2 there, 17 and 14 straight up. Still a couple games underwater against the spread at 13, 17 and 1. Only went 1-3 on the totals because that's just the way that this season has gone. So I was unfortunately a little bit underwater at 5 and 7, but hey, it's not the 3 and 9s that I was used to earlier in the season, so I guess I'll take it. Did have a solid week, however, in CFL Fantasy in Week 8, just barely getting over that 100-point mark at 101.4 for Week 8. That was top 450 across the entire game at number 449 and number 37 in Derek Taylor's league, so we will take those results. On the season now, 786 points, actually vaults me well inside the top 300 in the overall game on the season at number 262 and number 37 overall in Derek Taylor's league. So I'm sitting in comfortable spots right now. Obviously want to continue moving forward, but I like where I'm at. I had a fairly balanced attack in Week 8, but my most outstanding player, Calgary wide receiver Trey Odoms-Dukes. I've been singing his praises all season long. He caught 8 balls for 87 yards in their game last week, brought in 16.7 fantasy points. He's my MOP. As I talk about this week's slate of games, I will remind you that I am, of course, sponsored by the wonderful folks at Nerd Tees, and we'll talk about Nerd Tees in the middle part of the episode. Our 4-game slate for Week 9 in the CFL looks like this. You got the battle of the two best teams in the West Division, the BC Lions traveling to Winnipeg to take on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. The Bombers come into that game off of their bye, and the Lions will be on the tail end of back-to-back road games, confirming a second straight start for Dane Evans. The Toronto Argos hit the road for their 4th consecutive road game. Yes, I'm counting Touchdown Atlantic as a road game because it was a neutral site. Their 4th straight road game as they go to Calgary to take on Jake Maier and the Stampeders. We've got Montreal in Hamilton, Alouettes taking on the Ticats, and Ottawa travels to Saskatchewan to take on the Riders. Looking at some league-wide trends, hey, betting favorites ran the table last week. Hamilton actually had moved to minus 1.5, so they had moved to a marginal betting favorite by kickoff last week. So hey, they ran the table against the spread last week. Was kind of cool to see. Another road favorite hitting. We talked about the road favorites and how strong they've been this year. Road favorites now 66.7% against the spread this season. 8-4 against the spread are the road favorites, and non-overtime games in the CFL still very strong unders, only going 9-19 to the over if the game doesn't go to OT. So we'll kick things off with that marquee West Division matchup, the BC Lions traveling to Winnipeg to take on the Blue Bombers. Again, Bombers coming in off their bye. And look, the Lions did their thing last week. They clobbered a hapless Elks team by 27, pitching a defensive shutout, allowing only 232 total yards. So that's a great defensive performance. They amassed 449 total yards of their own and possessed the ball for over 37 and a half minutes. It's exactly what I said they had to do, hand the ball to the defense, but the offense got to shine as well. That offense was, of course, quarterbacked by Dane Evans, and look, his sort of spot start here while Vernon Adams is recovering from his knee injury resulted in a very clean 330 yards passing, 2 passing touchdowns, no interceptions. Taquan Mizell also returning to the lineup in the running back position, 24 touches and 147 all-purpose yards. He added a receiving touchdown in that game. And I talked about the defense. The defense holding Taylor Cornelius under 210 all-purpose yards, snagging 2 interceptions. Top to bottom, it was the BC Lions showing why they're the BC Lions and why they've been so good this year. If I do have any criticism of this incredibly good Lions team, their offensive line did allow 5 quarterback sacks, and that was a week after losing their starting quarterback, Vernon Adams, to an injury off of a quarterback sack. So look, they've allowed 12 in their last 3 games, and they've allowed at least 3 every game since, I believe, week 3 inclusive. So every game from week 3 to now, they've allowed at least 3 quarterback sacks. That can start to be a problem. Again, you've got Vernon Adams now dealing with an injury. You got Dane Evans in there. You obviously don't want to get Dane Evans absolutely clobbered, and they're playing a team in the Winnipeg Blue Bombers that do have a fairly strong pass rush. So the offensive line has got to be on point. Speaking of the Bombers, they come into this game off of their bye after doubling up the Elks in Week 7. So you got a rare matchup here where both teams had the same opponent in their previous game. So the Bombers, they doubled them up in Week 7, but it was a 5-point game through 3 quarters. It was closer than the final score would indicate. I think the final was 28-14 in that game, but they pitched a shutout in the 4th quarter, and their studs were their studs, and that got them the win. When I'm talking about their studs were their studs, Zach Collaros, 83% on his completions, 308 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. He was Zach Collaros. Brady Oliveira, 19 touches for 120 all-purpose yards. That's a Brady Oliveira game. The combination of Nick Dembski and the returning Kenny Lawler combining for 11 catches for 208 yards receiving. Nick Dembski adding a receiving touchdown in that game. Plus, they possessed the ball for over 33 3/4 minutes. Only took 3 penalties for 40 yards. A very Bombers-esque victory. And we've talked about it this season on more than one occasion. I think the idea being, if the Bombers had an Achilles heel this year, it seemed to be the defense, that the defense was at the very least giving up a lot of total yards, but had even started, having the scoreboard lit up on them a little bit. If you look at just the month of July, excluding the Dustin Crum game, obviously where he had that crazy comeback and they wound up losing. If you just exclude that game, the Bombers' defensive efficiency is an insane 33 yards allowed per point allowed. That's crazy. The BC Lions are the league leaders in this stat on the season. Theirs is 21. Think about how much better 33 is than 21 in this respect. So their efficiency, the Bombers, excluding the Dustin Crum game, has been absolutely insane. But the question is, can they do it against a top 3 team? You're talking about, like, they had games against Calgary, Montreal, teams that are objectively not as good as them. So can they do it against a top opponent? This game, to me, has the feel of one that will be dictated with the ball in Zach Collaros' hands. What the Bombers' offense, the second most efficient offense in the CFL, can do to crack the most efficient defense in the CFL, which belongs to the BC Lions. If they can crack that defense, I don't like Dane Evans' chances of winning this game in a shootout. If this game becomes a shootout, I just don't see it. It might not even need to become a shootout, to be perfectly honest, for the Blue Bombers to win it. I'm feeling the Bombers in this one. They are a fairly strong home favorite here, but there's something about Dane Evans against the Blue Bombers. I'm not comfortable with it. So let's grab Winnipeg here, well rested off the bye. Winnipeg gets the win at home against the Lions. Now, on the line, like I said, they're a strong favorite here against the spread. Laying -5.5 are the Bombers here at home. I think that's too many points. This strikes me as a competitive football game on all accounts. This has to be a preview of the West Final. I don't see how it couldn't be at this point in the season. So I think this is going to be a competitive playoff style football game. I just don't see a blowout here, really in either direction. So 5.5 points I kind of like. I'm going to have to take those plus 5.5 on that incredible defense in BC. Total in the game set at 44.5 points. I am actually going to lean on the Bombers defense being that hyper-efficient defense that we've saw in every game except the Dustin Crum game. So I'm actually going to grab an under here. It's not a great under because 44.5 is so beatable. And who knows, maybe this could be a game that kind of has the feeling of a game going to overtime. And if it does, it's basically a layup that it's going to go over a point total. But I'm going to lean under on this one. Low scoring game. Give me the Bombers to beat the BC Lions 23-20. So we're going to take the Bombers straight up, but I'm going to take those plus 5.5 points on the Lions and keep the game under the point total. We move to Calgary now, where the Stampeders are going to play host to the Toronto Argos. Argos obviously still undefeated at 6-0 on the season, cruising to a victory in Touchdown Atlantic over Mason Fine and the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Final score there, 31-13. Low scoring game, fairly low event game until the fourth quarter when it really kind of blew up. But they also proved in that game, did the Argos, that they don't need Chad Kelly to have a Chad Kelly game in order to have a very convincing win. That's what this was. Despite the fact that the Argos allowed over 400 yards passing between the combination of Mason Fine and Jake Dolegala, Fine was benched for Dolegala late in the game, and two 100-yard receivers in Sean Bain and Tevin Jones. The Argos defense pitching a halftime shutout. It was 21-0 at halftime. Finished the game with 5 quarterback sacks and 2 interceptions, which included an Amos pick six. Like I said, this was not a typical Chad Kelly game. He only had 126 all-purpose yards. He did throw a touchdown. He did also throw an interception. And look, I was there live. That interception was ugly. That is a young quarterback, fairly inexperienced quarterback, at least as a starting quarterback, making a bad decision. He was facing a ton of pressure, basically threw it up like, whatever, DeAndre Hopkins is down there somewhere, and it was an ugly interception. It was just not typical and not something that you're going to see, obviously, from him every week, but did look kind of ugly. The offense just didn't need much in this game. What they did get, however, and I can say for the rest of my life, that hashtag I was there live when Andrew Harris became the 5th all-time leading rusher in CFL history. He put up 41 yards on just 7 carries, taking over number 5 all-time. I was there. We move over to Calgary now, and the Stampeders dropping a 1-possession decision in Montreal, where just as soon as I come on here and start saying, hey guys, moratorium on, criticizing Jake Maier, he had a great game. Just as soon as I come on here and say that, he has a very ineffectual showing. 256 yards passing, that's fine. No touchdowns, 2 picks, and the pick 6 in the game, which was the difference on the scoreboard. But of course, it wasn't just Jake Maier. Their run game completely disappeared in that game against, a pretty pedestrian run defense. I believe Montreal's bottom 3 in the league still, even after that game, in terms of their total run defense. But the run game was gone. Non-quarterbacks for the Calgary Stampeders go for just 42 yards rushing on 9 carries. So, first of all, you were in a 1-possession close game the whole way. How are non-quarterbacks only rushing the ball 9 times? Commitment breeds success, especially with the run game. Yes, you weren't finding a lot of success. Yes, it's still it's 4.5 yards a carry. Commitment breeds success. Even if you're not immediately finding success with it, pound the ball, especially in close football games. That has to be your identity if you're not a great football team, and the Calgary Stampeders are not a great football team, but they do have a really good running back. Pound the ball, commit to the run, and all of a sudden, before you know it, hey, it's not as difficult to find holes in this defensive line anymore because they're tired, because they don't like tackling me. They don't like running up against my big offensive lineman run blocking all game. Commitment breeds success. They weren't committed to it, and it shows because Tommy Stevens was their leading rusher. The failure in that game for the Stampeders also lies with the defensive line, who registered just one single sack against arguably the worst offensive line in the CFL. A lack of pressure all game allowed the Alouettes to do exactly what I said they needed to do to find success and potentially win that game last week. Keep the pressure off of Fajardo with quick passes and a commitment to the run game. They carried the ball 23 times for $119 on the ground, did the Alouettes. So first of all, you got the Stampeders run defense giving up nearly $120 on the ground, but they weren't able to put pressure on Cody Fajardo, who's able to get the ball out consistently, not give their guys enough time to get to the quarterback because the pressure just wasn't there. But again, when your quarterback can't score touchdowns and is throwing picks, it's difficult to win in this league. This one's on me. I should not have allowed myself to be swayed off of my opinion about the Calgary Stampeders, because my opinion was correct. I allowed myself to be swayed off of it for like a couple of weeks there. The offense has improved slightly. They're more efficient than they were a few weeks ago, but this defense is really bad. Really inefficient, and they have nothing. They cannot leave a mark on the champ's face, even in their fourth straight road game, even in a situation where they just had to play in Atlantic Canada, and now they're going to have to go all the way across the country to the west. Given all of these things, they ain't going to leave a mark on the champ's face. I'm on the Argos here in a big bad way in this game. Toronto goes to Calgary, gets a decisive win over a Stampeders team that's going to be searching for answers, and the coach might be a part of it. Now on the line here, Calgary are massive underdogs at home. Calgary taking +8 at home. But look, we've talked about it. We've talked about road favorites, how well they're doing this year against the spread. I think that kind of continues this week. Give me the Argos straight up, and I'm going to lay the -8 points on Toronto. Yes, it's their fourth straight road game. Do I think that particularly matters with this team? Not really, no. So I'm going to go ahead and lay those points, laying -8 on the Argos. Total in the game set at 51 points. I'm going to stay under on this one, even though Calgary's defense is really inefficient, which does mean Toronto could potentially run up the score. Who knows? If they get a defensive score in this game, this total's going over. I really feel confident about that. But look, the Argos are obviously not just the most efficient offense in the CFL. They're pretty darn efficient defense as well. I just don't know how many opportunities for points are going to be there for the Calgary Stampeders. So give me the under in this one, under 51 points in Toronto. Calgary, we're going to go Argos 30, Stampeders 18. So Argos win, Argos cover the -8, and give me the under on the points. Halfway mark of the show, which means I'm going to take the opportunity, as I always do, to shout out my great friends and sponsors at Nerd Tees. Ladies and gentlemen, nerdtees.ca is where you need to go to find dozens and dozens of incredible loose leaf tea, estate, and flavored coffee blends. Whatever your taste palette is, whatever your fancy is on the caffeine level, look, Nerd Tees has got everything for you, including this, a lovely and delicious tea of a cup of fruit roll tea, which smells just like a fruit roll-up. It takes you back to your days as a kid when you just hoover those things down at recess and lunch. You gotta love it. Nerdtees.ca. You're going to want to use my promo code, which is BWFinest. That's going to save you 15% at checkout. You're also going to get free shipping in Canada on any order over $100, or a great conversion rate on the US dollar if you're one of my viewers in the USA. Nerdtees.ca. Promo code BWFinest, save your 15%, get your free shipping, find yourself something to love, or find someone you love something to love. You can do it on nerdtees.ca. Off to the hammer we go, as the Ticats are going to play host to a Montreal Alouettes team who picked up a low event win against the Calgary Stampeders, an aforementioned game where the run game and the kicker were honestly the only real highlights, along with a Kabian Ento pick 6 that wound up being the difference on the scoreboard. This game did, however, see a nice bounce-back performance for William Stanback. He registered his highest rushing total of the season. It's only 86 yards, but it was still his highest total on the year, and his most all-purpose yards since week 2. He went for 104 APY in this game, meaning he was involved in the pass game, put up 86 yards rushing. A nice game. We all know how talented William Stanback is. It was nice to see it on the stat sheet for the first time in a while. Montreal is now running into the same problem that Ottawa ran into a week or two ago. And what that was is now you look at like official rankings, and a lot of places are now ranking the Alouettes as the 4th best team in the CFL on the heels of a game where their only touchdown against the most inefficient defense in the league was a pick 6. So it didn't even come from their offense. So once again, we're going to go ahead and pump the brakes just a little bit on the idea of the Montreal Alouettes being the 4th best team in the league. It's probably more a reflection of the fact that after the top 3, the other 6 are not interchangeable, but like they're also close to each other with the exception of Edmonton. They're also close to each other that I guess it can be tough to establish who the 4th best team is. But the idea that the Alouettes are like objectively better than all of those other teams, I don't necessarily see it. Not based off of that game. For the Ticats, they grind out their 3rd win in their last 4 games to kind of turn the season around here a little bit, miraculously overcoming 5, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 Bo Levi Mitchell interceptions in his return from injury, somehow inexplicably still winning that game. But they did lose Bo to another long-term injury on obviously a play that was exceptionally controversial. And the high point of controversy in that game obviously was the quarterback sneak at the end. I know Orlando Steinauer went on his podcast, his show on the Ticats Network, kind of trying to explain his rationale. Honestly, I didn't like it. I didn't like the explanation at all. It felt like the explanation was like, well, Bo had been in there all game, so, the ball really should be in his hands. You have running backs. You have backup quarterbacks. You don't have to take this guy that just missed. Well, first of all, this guy that you paid a lot of money for, who just missed multiple games with an injury, who we're all pretty confident you rushed back, and then put him in a situation where he has to run a quarterback sneak in the shadow of his own goalposts in the dying seconds of the game. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, and they're like, well, we couldn't do the ace victory formation. You have other plays. You have run plays. Run one of them, but not the quarterback sneak. The explanation just didn't hold any water to me. And also, there's a grander question there. After 5 interceptions, why was Bo Levi Mitchell even still in the game? I understand that Schultz is hurt. I understand that I think Powell might have dressed as the 2nd or maybe 3rd guy, but like, put anybody in there. Look, like wide receivers that can throw the ball might not throw 5 picks in a game. So after 5 interceptions, it's insane that they didn't lose that game by like 20. The reason they weren't blown out of the water was their defense. And props to the Ticats defense, who I have maligned for a lot of this season, but they were deadly on 2nd down. They were in advantageous situations, and they were locked down on 2nd down in this game. And as a unit, they were committed to preventing Dustin Crum from beating them at multiple levels. Crum was only 59% for $158 through the air. Didn't throw a touchdown, did throw a pick. They were committed. They were like, that guy's not going to beat us. If they're going to beat us, it's going to be somebody else, but it ain't going to be that guy. And they did a great job of locking the game down on 2nd down, forcing a lot of punts, giving themselves a chance to win despite all the turnovers. Honestly, I can't say that I love either one of these teams right now. Both of these teams, I believe, have core fundamental problems that are going to prevent them really from making any noise when it really, really counts, like come playoff time. But I'm going to skew in this one on the side of the much more efficient defense, which is the Montreal Alouettes, taking on a third-string quarterback. It's probably going to be Taylor Powell because Matt Schultz still has an indefinite timeline to come back. So I'm going to skew on a really efficient defense against a third-string quarterback. Give me the Montreal Alouettes in this game on the road in Hamilton. I think the Owls pick up the win. Montreal over the Ticats. Now on the line, Hamilton is taking plus 2.5 as a home dog. We got another road favorite, and I believe that road favorite is going to hit. Give me the minus 2.5 on the Alouettes. I like them to win. It's a small price to pay. I'll lay minus 2.5. Total in the game here set at 45.5 points. Pretty decent number, but I actually think I'm going to go over on this one. I think if one of these teams gets into the mid-20s, which I think obviously the winner of the game will, I think it's going to get over by just a couple of points, but we're going to go over on it. Over 45.5 points in Montreal Hamilton. Let's go Alouettes 27, Ticats 21. So we got Alouettes winning, Alouettes covering minus 2.5, and give me the over on the points. And the last game we're going to look at is the Ottawa REDBLACKS in Saskatchewan taking on the Roughriders. Hey, remember like a minute and a half ago when I said it's mind-boggling to me that the Hamilton Ticats won a game while throwing 5 interceptions? The Ottawa REDBLACKS were the team on the other side of that game, and they had no business losing that game after their secondary eats Bo Levi Mitchell alive for 5 interceptions and only allowed 302 total offensive yards in that game. They had no business losing that football game. Dustin Crum was once again the leader of that offense with 240 all-purpose yards between throwing the ball and running, but he needed pay dirt and he couldn't find it. Is it possible that the book is kind of written on him now? Because we saw that they obviously figured out ways at multiple levels to contain Dustin Crum. So the fact that they were able to do that might mean that there's now some really meaningful game tape on how to stop him. I also want to give you a number. The number I'm going to give you is 23. And no, it's not some numerology stuff. 23 is the number of quarterback sacks that Ottawa quarterbacks have taken since the start of that game in week 5, which was the Jeremiah Masoli gets hurt, enter Dustin Crum game. 23 quarterback sacks. Now, that's a product of the style of play of their new starting quarterback, but Dustin Crum is not invincible by any means. You can't take 6 sacks a game and always get back up. He's always gotten back up so far, but eventually it's going to be nut cutting time, and he's going to take a hit that he shouldn't have taken, and he's not going to get up from it. Now, on the Riders' sideline, they dropped touchdown Atlantic in a convincing fashion to obviously the league best Toronto Argos. The Argos moved to 6-0. Riders, it's not a quarterback controversy yet. It's getting close. Mason Fine did get pulled in this game, as I mentioned. Jake Dolegala finished it off, and Dolegala was actually pretty good coming in. It wasn't exactly like he was going to lead him on a comeback trail, but he came in and he was certainly a lot more effective than Mason Fine was. Fine does not strike me as the guy right now. And I know Riders backers are quick to talk about, well, look at how many wide receiver injuries we have. And they're not wrong. Kyan Schaefer-Baker is not in this lineup right now. Darrell Walker is not in this lineup right now. So yes, their wide receivers are beaten up. But you look at the way Sean Bain and Tevin Jones are playing right now. It's 2 bona fide studs in their wide receiving core. And when KSB and Walker do come back, because they're supposed to come back fairly soon, I think. Both of their timelines were kind of early August. You got a 1, 2, 3, 4 of KSB, Darrell Walker, Sean Bain, and Tevin Jones. That might be the best 1, 2, 3, 4 at receiver in the entire league. Sean Bain, 10 catches for $144 and a touchdown. Tevin Jones, 9 catches for $133. They're both monsters. They're really good. This Riders team is an absolute conundrum when you look at the numbers. They're a top 3 total offense across the entire league, but they're the second least efficient offense, which means they get a lot of yards, but they don't do a lot with them. They are the number 2 total defense in the CFL, but they're the least efficient defense in the CFL. So they don't give up a ton of yards, but they give up a lot of points on the board. So just an absolute conundrum of a football team. Opponents of the Saskatchewan Roughriders do more with less every single week. It's for that reason that I have to be on the REDBLACKS in this game. This is Dustin Crum's second shot against a truly milquetoast defense, and that is what this Riders team is. The total yards look great, but there are points to be had all over the place. So it's his second straight shot against a defense that I have to consider weak. So I think this is where we see Crum kind of get back into his groove and start putting some more points on the board. I just don't see lightning striking twice here with the ineffectiveness of Ottawa's offense. Give me the dynamic playmaking of that offense and give me the REDBLACKS on the road in Saskatchewan to get the win over the Riders. Now, Vegas doesn't really know what to do with this game. The REDBLACKS right now are a very marginal 1-point favorite in this one. So I like them to win. So I guess I'll lay the -1. We're going to go -1 on the REDBLACKS. Total in this game set at 44.5 points. This is a pretty darn good total, right around where I think it's going to be. But I'm going to go over here by just a couple of points because especially with the Montreal Hamilton game as well, these last 2 games I could totally see going into overtime. And it's not like I'm trying to cherry pick when games are going to go into overtime. But if they do, they're basically guaranteed overs just because of the nature of the overtime period. So I'm going to lean on that and go over 44.5 points. It's a beatable number, and I could see the game going to OT. So give me the Ottawa REDBLACKS to win the game, and give me them to win the game 26-20. REDBLACKS straight up, REDBLACKS -1, and give me the over on the points. There you go, folks. Those are the picks for week 9 in the CFL, and let's go over them here with you one more time. I've got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers beating the BC Lions 23-20 in Winnipeg. I'm taking the +5.5 on the Lions in a game that stays under 44.5 points. I got the Toronto Argos clobbering the Calgary Stampeders 30-18. Give me the -8 on the Argonauts and give me the under on the 51-point total. I got the Montreal Alouettes beating Hamilton in Hamilton by a score of 27-21. Give me the -2.5 on the Alouettes in a game that goes over 45.5 points. And I got the Ottawa REDBLACKS in Saskatchewan getting the win 26-20 over the Riders. Give me -1 on Ottawa and give me the over on the 44.5 point total. With the Elks on the bye this week, my fantasy roster is going to look exceptionally similar to what it looked like last week. I'm not going to go too deep into kind of what I'm looking at yet this week because, again, I think it's going to look exceptionally similar. My roster from last week is in the comments section of last week's video if you want to go take a look. I'm probably going to lean on Crum again at quarterback, although it's going to be tough to not take Chad Kelly because I imagine he's going to bounce back from that really kind of mediocre showing in Touchdown Atlantic. So we're probably going to lean one of those 2 ways. Wide receivers, probably going to look at one of those top guys in Montreal, either Mac or Kyan Julian Grant. One of those top guys in Saskatchewan, even though I don't think they're going to win that game. Ottawa, who interestingly enough just activated Braylon Addison off the injured list, so you could see him in a REDBLACKS uniform sooner rather than later. That's going to be very interesting. If I go with Crum, I'll almost certainly stack him with either Justin Hardy or Nate Bahar. Running back, I'm going to be shying away from Oliveira and Mizell. It's probably going to wind up being AJ Ouellette again, to be perfectly honest. Might look at another shot at William Stanback. I think he can kind of build on the momentum there. Might take a look at Jamal Morrow, but would have to depend on the price. Defensively, probably going to look at the Argos, depending on price. Maybe the Bombers, depending on price. Maybe even look at the Red Blacks there, because I think they're going to have a lot of success against Saski. That's the Week 9 episode. It is now in the books. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch and listen. As always, I genuinely appreciate it. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at Nerd Tees. Enjoy the games in Week 9, and we will see you again for double digits already. Week number 10.